Today, we're going to go over how I personally fillet whole Mahi Mahi. Now, to start with, I do just, for every fish, I kind of do a standard cut, which is right here. I do a guide cut on both sides of the fish, right along the tail where I want to end. Now with the Mahi, I kind of do a different guide cut up in the head, because what I found is there's kind of two bone fragments that stick out and kind of form what would look like a crown from the front. And so you kind of have to dig your knife in behind it to expose the meat. You can't just cut straight down. But once you access that, you can just follow the dorsal fin all the way down back to the tail. And again, here I'm feeling for that bone I mentioned, as well as the collarbone, and cutting around. Once I break the skin, that kind of will help me release that flap of meat up in the head, and you'll see me start to just roll it open right about here. Boop. Mahi is kind of a pleasure to fillet. It's not just a basic salmon where the form is always the same. It's an off form. Gives you a little bit more of a challenge. And on top of that, the size of the vertebrae running down the spine are a lot denser and stand up a lot more. So if you're not careful and your knife gets on top of those vertebrae and you run down to the tail, you'll end up leaving a significant amount of flesh still on the bones once you're done filleting. So that's why you'll see me kind of just take my time getting to the bone. You'll probably even hear it if I have the audio turned up in the recording. But it's kind of like putting baseball cards on the spokes of your bicycle. You can hear your knife running down the vertebrae. This section is one area that I kind of struggle with a lot. With the Mahi, the rib cage and the pin bones are so dense that I sometimes have to just kind of, I don't want to use the word hack, but hack through each individual bone, which inevitably kind of bevels the belly meat. Now onto the second half of the Mahi. Again, that guide cut, that's where I'm starting on the second half, because since I'm left-handed, I flip the fish over and put the tail farthest away from me. That way my cutting surface is on the left-hand side. Following the dorsal fin all the way up into the head. Get as far up as I can, and then I start feeling around for that crown-like bone. Make the cut around it, and since this is the second half of the fish, I kind of already have the whole top loin exposed, but this is where I decide I'm going to move out of the head and just open up the rest of the fillet. That way I can have better access to the ribs. If you don't do that and you try and cut through the ribs, there's a really good chance you're going to cut off a lot of the dense, highly sought after top loin meat on the fillet. Now, while I'm filleting fish, the whole rest of the restaurant is being set up, and this is where I kind of start getting distracted while trying to fillet the fish. You start to see me turn away from the table, set my knife down. You'll even see me start tapping my knife on the table because I don't want to be cutting and carrying on a conversation that is kind of demanding my attention. You'll notice I've now turned the audio off in the video, mostly due to the contents of the conversation. It's kind of a private and personal conversation. So right there, I went through the ribs, and I'm trying to do shallow cuts, and once I notice I'm through the last rib, I pick up the end of the knife to kind of stand the blade up on the bones to separate everything on the back side of the vertebrae. This way I'm keeping as much flesh on the fillet as possible, giving me a really clean skeleton when I'm done. And it kind of looks like I'm grabbing and like pulling the fillet away from the bones, but I'm actually just gently lifting and holding. There's really no squeezing of the flesh. And then I finally roll it open right here, and there's just a few dents, tendons, and bones in that one, I believe it's called a post-anal fin, that you kind of have to cut through. But once it's separated and you're done, you now have your two giant fillets, and you just fold your carcass back up like a giant book. It's actually kind of difficult, but when you get it done, the vertebrae kind of pop. I know, I'm weird. But once you're done, you just discard it and prepare for the last step. Unfortunately, the video is not going to show the full process, but this is how I portion the fillet out for the display case to get the most presentable steaks possible. And here, making its on-screen appearance, is my super flexible 9-inch fillet knife. And while still on the skin, I'm making my cuts, and then I'm going to flip the fillet over and just run my knife from tail to head and remove both the steaks and the two portions that will get sent to the kitchen. I hope you have enjoyed this commentary on filleting of a mahi by myself. Please leave a like and a comment down below and let me know what you like. Feel free to subscribe. I should be doing this more.